Hello, it's 1 minute. I'm Hal Sparks. I think it's working. I hope so. We don't know. Here we go. Hey, look at that. Let's see about the video output this time around. All should be well, in theory, anyways. A little murky. Okay, good to know. Well, that looks fairly terrible. I can't tell if the video is reasonable on my end, or terrible on my end, but reasonable on yours, or what. So let me know, chat room, if any of this is coming through, if you can hear audio and all that kind of stuff. If it's still interfering in your Okay, so video feed is choppy. Do you hear audio though? Is there audio? Let me know. About 1 frame a second. That's fairly terrible. Okay, hold on. Audio's fine, but soft. That might be on your end. Video is great. Looks choppy, but good audio. Okay. Okay. Well, that's a start. Pixelating. Okay. We might have. It might to be the nature of it. Let's see. Okay. If I change the output, be right back. Now we'll see if it comes up all right. Now we'll see if we got an okay signal or not. This should simplify it, hopefully, just bringing back some of that. Okay, so, and I'll bring up the audio. How about that? There's some, yes, the initial melting should stop after a moment, and we'll hopefully get some sound there. Let's see. Okay, well, I'm glad the audio is good, and the rest of it will appear like an abstract art installation by a video artist from 1987. Museum of Modern Art, which they had to change the name in the other cities to the MoCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art, when someone made a, I guess, decided that modern was a, stream resume, stream is continuing. That's me. Hold on. All right, stream health. I'll try and get this thing buffering. And the output destination has performance issues. That's interesting. How did it drop down below that? What the heck? All right. Okay. I'll drop out again. I'll be right back. Well, hopefully this will get us somewhere in the ballpark. Sort of splitting the difference. And the encoder is too low. All right. All right, this might be the best we're going to do today. Okay, we're getting ballpark. Okay, encoder status normal. This should be all right. It's getting a little choppy every so often. We'll see. Hopefully, we'll just be a little grizzled today. Hi, everybody. It takes it a moment to kind of get its bearings, and then this computer kicks in theory. But again, it, like I said, it may be abstract art. But considering our current issue, let's see. Had a small freak out in my air conditioning. Went out and had to get an electrician to put in a new breaker. Yeesh. In this heat? Yes, well, definitely you've got dulcet tones today. That's the easy part. As long as it doesn't buffer too much, I suppose. But we'll be starting in about a minute. And yeah, so wish me luck. Hello from 2004. That's exactly right. This is like the old Ustream days.
You have a minute and a half. Now, the Trump you said, is it 19 by C-SPAN? 19 minutes long?
Possibly.
he talks, the beginning he says about Comey of the firing, he did the right thing. Is that it or no?
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
Okay. Okay.
I've got some here. I'll be all right. So.
Okay.
Yeah. We shall see. Yeah, I'll try to argue to pull out of Iraq and argue that there are no WMDs. Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Hearing him is more important than seeing him. I'm good with chatting here so long as the sound is good. Yeah. It comes back in every so often. Okay, thank you. I like how my head just kind of folds in on some abstract art.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. Things are going to start happening to me now.
Live exclusively for WCPT AM and FM in Chicago and streaming worldwide at chicagosprogressivetalk.com. Standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
To do the bind.
Wow, what a tough sentence for Paul Manafort, who's represented Ronald Reagan, Bob Dole, and many other top political and campaigns.
Trump tweeted Friday afternoon just before turning his attention on former FBI Director James B. Comey and Hillary Clinton.
Didn't know Manafort was the head of the mob. What about Comey and Crooked Hillary and all the others? Very unfair.
So Friday at 8:30 p.m., jail records indicate that Paul Manafort, the president's campaign chairman, for half a year, basically 144 days, even though Trump, during an impromptu interview on the White House lawn yesterday, said that Manafort worked for him for 49 days. Never mind the fact that he's known him for decades, worked out of Trump Tower, was at the famous meeting with Natalia Veselnitskaya. Never mind that fact. This is another coffee boy. You know, he's just, they barely worked on our campaign. Who cares if I thanked him from the podium for doing a great job and for almost single-handedly wresting our campaign from the jaws of defeat? Who cares about that, really? I mean, the honest part of it is, that he was here for a couple days. I mean, I don't even know Paul Manafort, So before 8:30 p.m., jail records indicate that Paul Manafort has been processed into Northern Neck Regional Jail in Warsaw, Virginia. His prisoner number, for those of you that are curious, is 45343. That's right, 45343 has to be a hashtag now. Maybe Trump should be 45344, or even probably better 45345. The jail is about 90 miles southeast of Washington. It comes as no surprise that Paul Manafort was chucked in jail. Yeah. And one of our chat room people, Edward, says, is it a country club? Curiously enough, the wing, I guess the sec pop area that he was put in is called VIP 1. That's right. Even in jail, Trump's cronies are VIPs. That's right. So as of today and as of last night, this morning, Paul Manafort woke up in jail. Prisoner 45343 woke up this morning, had whatever snack foods were available to him in the VIP sections. Probably going to play the saddest game of golf today he's ever played. Probably just like 9 holes, maybe even 6. It's no Duraldo or Durango or Dormammu, whatever the Trump location of the week is. But a federal judge ordered him to jail after the Mueller investigation, along with attorneys from the the case in Virginia against him, that he's been attempting to limit witness testimony against himself. That's the most charitable way I can phrase it, against himself. And his argument as to why he should still be allowed outside during this was one of the most ludicrous arguments I think I've ever heard legally. There were two elements to Manafort's argument. That one was at a certain point they have a I guess the method by which he was actually doing it was fairly sneaky, although not that odd. It's Al Qaeda allegedly uses it. It is more than likely one of the ways that leaks are getting out of the White House right now, and that is, of course, to what you do is you set up an email address for yourself. You put certain you write a letter that you want to send to somebody else, but you never send it, and it stays in the draft folder. Then you, in person, via some other source, you give the password and the login information entirely to the person you want to be in contact with, usually verbally, or in the case of North Korea, like a giant envelope. And what happens is that person logs into that account and they can read what's in the draft folder, and it's an email that was never sent. So even if you are busted, the argument early on, before people got savvy to this entire situation, even before you logged on, or even back in, I'd say 2005, 2006, when this started becoming a real thing, and ultimately you could argue in court that you never sent that email, that you were thinking about talking to this person and you were thinking about coordinating a story, but you didn't. As a matter of fact, Your Honor, my client wrote an email that would have been made him guilty of obstruction of justice and witness tampering, but he, in a moment of morality, never sent it. And that's why you should be more lenient on because he is he's considering very strongly the important aspect of obeying the law, and he doesn't want any any impropriety to be the illusion of impropriety. So the order to put him in jail, the judge did what I thought was a fantastic fake out. Now, a lot of times judges will do this. They give you a moment and you'll see this in a lot of readings. They'll give you the stuff that makes you feel like they'll give you the opposite of whatever their ruling is in the beginning. And so this judge basically came out and said, look, there's two reasons why you revoke somebody's bail according to the Bail Reform Act. The first one being that they are a danger to the society. They've got, they'll get out and they'll kill one of the witnesses, or they'll continue to have some sort of impact on the environment and the community. They'll continue to sell drugs. They'll continue to import and export guns, what have you. They'll find a way to continue to be a nuisance to the community, or dangerous or damaging to the community. And there's nothing, that if they get out, they'll wreak havoc, and the damage they do will not be able to be undone, is essentially the issue. Then the other one is flight. Will they leave? Are they going to go somewhere? Can you guarantee that they will show up for court? Now, he's had to revoke his passport, and he was wearing ankle bracelets that show where he is at any given time. So the idea is that, well, it's not, and the judge brought this up repeatedly. She's like that, obviously flight is not an issue and safety is not an issue. We do not have a situation where this guy is, going to go and shoot one of these witnesses against him. So, but the other factor is basically the continuation of illegality. So she gives that argument in the beginning, and it sounds like, if you're listening to it, that he's going to get off, that Manafort is actually going to get a break here, and that he's actually going to walk out of that courtroom. She goes, well, there's two aspects of the Bail Reform Act, and neither one of the charges against you satisfy that part of it. And there was almost a sigh of relief and a bit of kind of nervous pushback from his lawyers once the second part of her statement came around, which was, meanwhile, though, you cannot be trusted not to abide by the law, and which is another form of of witness tampering. I mean, it would be the equivalent of, you can't physically damage anyone, you're not going to leave town, but you can go back to your office and crank up the shredder, is the idea. That you could put together some sort of criminal enterprise in manufacturing testimony and those kind of things, which arguably should be a part of the Bail Reform Act and should be a standardized part. The fact that this judge actually has to worry about this is a bit odd. But she ultimately said, and it was, probably one of the more, I guess, moments of levity in the process of doing this, saying, you're not in middle school, I can't take away your phone. I think a wonderful moment of a judge momsplaining to somebody why they're in big trouble, mister. And then ultimately she remands him to jail for violating the terms of his home confinement in Alexandria, Virginia. The case against him is stark and amazing, and it's stunning that the president still seems comfortable saying there's no collusion, I've been completely exonerated, there's nothing about our campaign or anyone that's related to Russia or any of this Russia stuff, when literally his campaign chairman, who was literally working on the campaign during one of the most crucial turnaround moments, and periods in the campaign, 144 days on the campaign, thanked him from the podium, is now being charged with violations of the Foreign Agent Registration Act, has money laundering, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. These are the charges that everyone expects will eventually land right at the feet of Donald Trump. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Be right back, chat room. I'm going to try and fix this part. I just think this computer is the little computer that could, and it's trying its best. Okay. Love test. Getting the ankle bracelet off and really help Manafort's soccer game. How your mic is picking up a lot of room reverberation. Sounds like a speakerphone, which is with much better fidelity. Yeah, I think it's just, this is I got to soften this room because I'm right up on this mic. I don't know how else to make it sound better. Other than bringing down this part and bringing up this part, and hopefully, unless there's a second source on this guy. Yeah, nope. Built-in input, that's the only place the audio is coming from. Let's see. Yeah, today's just an encoder issue. Audio is good in Germany. Well, yay. That room makes me think Hal is going to start singing Imagine. Yeah. I've entered my Yoko Ono phase. This is true. Still not getting any, you might want to restart. I've lowered the frame rate as much as possible so you can see basically an outline of my face. Good morning, Tom. What's happening? Okay. Thank you, Billy.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Thank you, Billy, for the super chat. That's really awesome. For the Steph Curry should have won the Finals MVP award fund. The fascinating part about the Manafort case is an example in many ways of the bizarre situation that I feel like Trump voters find themselves in, trying to justify this anti-elitist concept that they seem to be pushing for a very long time, and matching that with the fact that first of all, Manafort's going to the VIP section of a jail that he was able to stay out of and do, stay in his luxury home during that time, during the 5 weeks since he's been charged and since his indictment, and the process and I guess Scott Pruitt as well, right? So the odd part of it is that the Trump voter at their root believes that Trump came in to change Washington. He's going to be unlike other politicians, and he's going to make America great again, and that he's going to be a positive force for the the country, and he'll be great for business. These are the primary, if you listen to their argument, aside some sort of like randomized weak-kneed reaction against quote unquote political correctness. The biggest reaction they had was that he'd be good for business, and that the elites would no longer run Washington. Okay, first of all, second and third generation rich kids are the elite. If there is an example of people who are in the position they are in, not based on merit, but because they won the genetic lottery, it's the Donald Trumps of the world, especially considering by all measures the money that his father gave him, which was not that initial $1 million. There was another $12 million and another $25 million that have both been spoken of. Not to mention the businesses he kind of pulled out from under his brother over time, and kind of absorbed the rest of the Trump business, as it were. The fact that his father started all this stuff based on racism, based on limiting who could stay in their buildings and that kind of stuff, like the history of this family, and the fact that Donald Trump was able to just kind of pick up as a millionaire just for starters, is an elite circumstance. Now, let's be clear: the hypocrisy of the Trump voter about the quote unquote elites stops at their own sort of belief system that they want what Trump has, and therefore, if he's in charge, maybe they have a better chance at getting it. This is the this sort of prosperity doctrine Christian problem as well, is that there are these groups of people who go, well, obviously God wants me to be rich. If he wants my pastor to be rich, my pastor has 3 planes. It's silly, but this is really kind of nuts, but it is indicative of the thought process that they're going through. Okay, so this is Manafort is an elite, okay, by all measure. He's a Washington lobbyist. He started a Washington lobby firm. All of the work that he's credited as doing by Trump, he's like, he worked for Ronald Reagan, he worked for Bob Dole, his company did. I don't know if he did, but his company did, because Stone, Manafort, Capone, or whatever their company was a lobbying firm that worked for tons of conservatives over the years. So the idea that the Trump voter is concerned about the swamp or elites running the government is an absurdity. It is indicative of a sort of a collapse in how Trump voters really have an I can't even describe the mentality that requires you to have that level of hypocrisy in your own internal conversation with yourself. It is one thing to believe that that politicians are duplicitous and are doing one thing and saying another and the like, but to do it in your own head is quite crazy. So this idea that somehow that Trump doesn't represent the elites, that he is outside of Washington, which by the way, he has been greasing the palms of shady and corrupt politicians for years. He admits to it. He says it's just how you do business. I don't know why anyone would be surprised that once he got into office, his administration is the most egregious in that behavior that has ever been there. I mean, it is stunning to me how comfortable he is with the very same. Well, okay. So, point being is that Trump, whatever he ran on, his whatever his people bought, the Manafort arrest and jailing is an indication that it was all a lie. By the way, also matching it with at the same time Scott Pruitt. I mean, these two examples, and I would say we'll get to Jeff Sessions and his faux Christianity as well. These are, quite frankly, three areas where the Trump voter is having someone in office doing exactly the opposite of what they said should be done, doing what literally the Trump voter views as wrong, and yet they are okay with as long as the messaging is there. They're allowed to do it, and there's there's this idea that they should be able to get away with it because on a personal level they are successful and therefore they're to be congratulated or supported. And if you believe Jeff Sessions' idea that simply the act of having been elected means they are ordained by God for the role that they have. Never mind the fact that we fought a revolutionary war to dismantle that very thought. When Jeff Sessions this week is quoting Romans and saying that, that just because somebody is in charge of the government, that means that they were ordained by God, that they should be followed over. And by the way, the keeping the top of my head from popping off, because they certainly didn't believe this scripture when Obama was in office, or Clinton for that matter, or retrospectively Carter or anyone else. They seem to believe that their presidential candidates are I guess visions of the second coming. I don't know how else to word it. There is this idea that there's a cult around Trump is not an exaggeration in any way. They are legitimately using biblical verse to support the existence of the man. They are the political equivalent of Branch Davidians. They believe that this man has called himself God, and therefore since he considers himself a man of God, but has never ever asked God for forgiveness for anything, doesn't even think he should have to at any point, that this is indicative of his piety, and worse, his divinity. So the Christian right and the Trump voters that are focused on the religious aspects of the culture war have a couple of things that they want to have happen. They want the end times to hurry up and get here because they're tired of waiting, and they're arrogant enough to think that the end times will happen while they're alive. And they think Trump's the guy to bring it about. And if that entails raining fire from the sky to do it, so be it. That is the end times Christianity doctrine. Those people are absolutely all in. The elitist, the Clinton cabal is the most corrupt criminal enterprise in the world. Those folks couldn't care less about Scott Pruitt taking, using staffers to go around and find lotion from a high-end hotel for him. Like, it's one thing to be involved in graft. It's another thing entirely to do it poorly. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Yeah. All right. Sorry, in the middle of my rant, the autoplay on the video on my iPad started making noise, and I was like, "God, be quiet." See if this audio sounds anywhere.
Are we close to asking Mr. Kent here at the White House?
Could happen. I mean,
We talked about that yesterday with Mike Pompeo.
yeah, I think it's something that could happen. Yeah. Hey, he's the head of a country, and I mean, he is the strong head. Don't let anyone think anything different.
Right.
He speaks and his people sit up at attention. I want my people to do the same.
Well,
Like that part. And he's like, that was a joke. You guys don't understand sarcasm. Like, no. We understand that you think that's funny. The reason he stands up to attention is because he kills people. So if you're threatening to kill your own staff and you're, the Marines that greet you as you come off of Marine One or Air Force One, then say that.
About a minute and a half. We do have one caller that wants to talk about Trump.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to take him now or after the video that you play.
Let's see. Let me think about it because I'm trying to pull up something right now. So we'll see. Give me a second. Yeah, but I probably will take him about midway through this next chunk.
Okay, cool.
Amos, I love you. I think it's hysterical that you actually think this crowd, the Trump crowd, is moved by MLK quotes. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. Terrifying to hear this kind of blatant fascist speech. Yeah.
Ten seconds.
Okay.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Okay, one of the big stories of obviously this week too has been the growing, hand-wringing and gnashing of teeth about the Trump administration's policy of separating children from their families, from their parents at the border, in an attempt to, in a blatant attempt to get Democrats to sign off on a bill that will pay for his border wall. This is all this is about. Let's understand this for a second. Let there be no ambiguity about what the president's goal is and his motivation is in this circumstance. The executive order ending DACA was an attempt by this president to force the Democrats to pay for the border wall, to sign off on a budgetary addition or a rise in DHS spending to pay for the border wall, which, by the way, Mexico was always going to pay for until it wasn't. All right. So that didn't work. Didn't work for a couple of reasons. One was a judge said, in many ways, the same issue that came up about don't ask, don't tell, when they had this kind of period of let's see how it goes. Everybody knew full well that during that period, when people come out of the closet and start telling people openly because they're allowed to that they are LGBT and they're serving in the military, you can't go back in the closet afterwards. You can't. So at a certain point, once that policy is rescinded even temporarily, it has to stay open, because you have literally, then there's no trust in any legal proceeding in the future, because you've just lured people out into the middle of the town square and so that you could attack them. There's no circumstance where people can come out of the shadows in any circumstance legally, because they've been given the legal right to do so, and then make them go back in the shadows and pretend that the people around them who would act in a discriminatory way towards them, that those people don't know that, and that behavior wouldn't start up again. So you are putting people in an untoward political and personal and legal and situation in jeopardy, even their safety. When you present a situation where legally they can come out of the shadows, and then they do, and then you rescind those protections. You can't do it. And the judge that found basically that in the circumstance with DACA, and so the temporary protection of DACA for the time being until the Congress can get its act together and pass a bill that protects the Dreamers, is been in this kind of situational legal limbo. But it's effectively all the case law is around protecting the people who've come out, because again, you can't undermine the entire credulity of the law of our legal system simply on a whim with an executive order. You can't do it for lots of reasons, and nobody wants that precedent. So a lot of even the Republicans are begrudgingly dealing with this fact, and they're more than happy to let a judge who they can write off as an activist judge, they can campaign against, but they're more than happy to let the judge do their job for them to protect themselves in the future. So the same thing applies in the case of that apply to Don't Ask, Don't Tell to DACA, and it didn't work. So the president tried to hold DACA recipients hostage to get his wall paid for. It didn't work. So the next plan was to push this zero tolerance policy dreamt up by Trump and Jeff Sessions and Stephen Miller in the White House, with the specific purpose of appearing as cruel as possible for two reasons. One, as quite frankly a PR campaign for people who are seeking asylum in the United States, people who are looking to undocumented people to enter the United States illegally, to let them know that this is a horrifying place. That this is a natural extension, by the way, of Mitt Romney's self-deportation concept. When Mitt Romney was talking about self-deportation, what he was really talking about, and let's understand that Bush, Mitt Romney, these guys seem soft and almost acceptable compared to Donald Trump. But at the same time, what Mitt Romney was really talking about was making life for immigrants so horrible in this country that people who are here illegally would self-deport. They would leave themselves because life here was just too hard. And the only way you do that is by making legal immigrants miserable as well, because you have to create a ceiling above them they can never breach. The idea being that even if they become legally they're here as Hispanics or Mexican Americans, they will constantly be harassed by the Sheriff Joe Arpaio's of the world, and therefore, why stay? That is the only reason, considering the circumstances in Mexico or in Guatemala or in Central America, that a lot of these people went to escape. They would go back. The circumstance they experienced would have to be so horrible to drive them back that it would be morally on the same level as what Trump is doing with the separation of children and their families. So this is just an exaggeration. This is that on steroids. This is the self-deportation model that Mitt Romney was presenting. The only difference between him and Trump is Trump's in office and is actually able to carry it out. That's it. The other reason for doing this is to lay the blame for this behavior at the feet of Democrats, so that they have to sign a bill leading up to the midterms, if they want to keep these families from being separated, to create this illusion that they have to solve this through legislation. And then in doing so, they will pay for the border wall and all of the rest of his priorities about border security, which will help the Republicans going into the midterms. And by the way, will not end the cruelty. Let's understand that they will, the family separations they'll write a small aspect into this about family separations, that they can stay with one parent but not both. Once they've crossed over, especially if they're asylum seekers or whatever, everybody else there'll be, elements of this that add to the cruelty, so that Trump can say next year, this is the Democrat bill. The Democrats put this into the bill, even if they didn't. So it's a scam. It's also unnecessary. The president could simply order the Justice Department not to do this. This is his own idea. This is, this is him, Jeff Sessions, and Stephen Miller hating people who come across the border and finding great pleasure in making their lives horrifying, especially people, seeking asylum from, failed states in South America. And you can tell this by the actions of Jeff Sessions last week, where he removed the standards set up by the Obama administration that protected victims of domestic violence and people trying to escape gang violence. By removing those protections, that unmasks their real feeling about the circumstance that, that this idea that they care about these families, or that that this is a democratic rule or law. They're dismantling the very rules that Democrats put in to treat people more humanely who are coming from war zones, who are coming from, to escape domestic, familial, sexual violence. They are stopping those policies. So this idea that somehow it's the Democrats' law and they need to fix it because the Democrats have to sign onto a law. This is simply a really lame, flailing attempt to get Democrats to pay for the wall. That's all this is, that he is holding these children hostage. It didn't work with DACA kids who are, at this point in their 20s, some of them, I think as old as 32, who've been here their entire lives. It didn't work with them. So Trump, threatening the lives of 20-somethings and people in their late teens wasn't effective enough. So Trump decided that it was time to threaten 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 6-year-olds, and to be as cruel as possible to them, and hope that drives the Democrats to pay for his border wall. The wall is one of his defining issues. The idea that he believes if he gets it, it will be a, as a builder and as a guy who just puts his name on other people's buildings, this will be the Trump wall for all time. This is his material addition to the United States. This is his Mount Rushmore. This is something that he wants there so that he can go, I built that wall. That's the whole thing. Then in many ways, you could argue that that's when he'll step down in the face of legal problems. But if that wall is built or is getting built, that's the only legacy he cares about. Because he understands, by the way, that legal protections, the kind of genuine politicking that politicians try to do to create a legacy as far as civil rights, workers' rights, even the rights of business to conduct business, decently, the growth of energy efficiency, a better, and safer banking system, these kind of things. When people try to create the Dodd-Franks of the world and those kind of things, he walked into that office and recognized that somebody like him, as dumb as he is, could sign a piece of paper and make that all disappear. But a wall is a wall is a wall, and that's all he cares about. And so he is willing to hold 2-year-olds hostage to try and scare Democrats into signing a bill that will that will pay for his wall in exchange for not separating these kids. The problem is it's so ham-handed and obvious that no one is falling for it. He tried it again yesterday. He said, this is the Democrats' law. Every time he does it, everybody pushes back and goes, what is exactly law? Even on Fox News, they're like, which law are you talking about? I don't know that exists. It's not going to work out the way he thinks it is the good news. And Democrats are smart to be pushing back on this as hard as they possibly can. And the idea that that they can use this as a talking point that's as strong as his initial talking point, which is the president has made up a policy out of whole cloth to hold children hostage simply so that he can get the Congress to pay for the United States taxpayer to pay for his wall that he always said Mexico would pay for, and still thinks that somehow they will over time through tariffs and whatnot. But we'll talk about that, and we'll take some calls when we come back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if it's the volume that makes it when the music gets turned up or gets turned down or something like that, but or what? But something the video starts to get flaky. I'm in Vegas today, actually. Yeah, Carl, I thought you might. I don't quite know what the issue is. It might just be that the computer I'm using is just far too weak to do the video. So I'll have to. I didn't have my laptop this week, so I'm using a Mac Mini, and I think I'm straining it to the absolute limits. No, I'm not doing a show. I live here part time, so there you go. The light from the window and the video compression algorithm. It's a good diagnosis, Edward. It's very bright and hot here, so I don't know that there's much I can do about that. It's just the nature of it. I also think it just might be that this computer doesn't have enough RAM, and that's not a problem I'm used to running into.
20 seconds.
Mm-hmm. And thank you.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So, in the tradition of the White House inability to not spill the beans at every turn, and Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions, simply saying that he believes there's a biblical belief system to a godlike aspect to Republican presidents that somehow, by the way, doesn't apply, that he can pick and choose where Scripture, who Scripture pertains to, which is an amazing act of arrogance, if you really think about it. Giuliani yesterday, I think, yesterday, claimed that the Russia investigation could, quote, get cleaned up with presidential pardons in light of Manafort going to jail. He said, when the whole thing is over, things might get cleaned up with some presidential pardons. Essentially just stating outright. I mean, this is, you talk about witness tampering, the idea that this guy could go on television and going, okay, how do we reach Manafort? We can't call him, whatever, but maybe they'll play Fox News in the VIP 1 area of the jail. Maybe, while I'm sitting here saying stuff about pardons, I'll just go 4, 5, 3, 4, 3 with my fingers, and people will know. So the and we do have a caller, by the way. Let me try and grab that caller or whatever. Lady B, you're going to have to relate what he's saying to me because I think we still have the issue with the phones. But who do we have?
We have Matt from Chicago.
Excellent.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, Bedelia / Hal.
Hey.
Okay, also, I'm getting feedback on myself, but I guess Hal can hear me and I can't hear him. So let's
True.
Hal, first of all, I'd like to say my apologies because I got the bar wrong. I went to the Goose Island Brewery Pub while you were in Chicago, and I was like, hey, and then at the Hamburger Mary's, I wouldn't have made it back. But I would have loved to see you actually live in person for once. That being said, the wonderful thing that is happening through all this terribleness is the fact that we are uniting stronger than before. Now, obviously, when I say we, I don't mean all those idiots who still are out there trumping. Trump's doing so great. Trump's doing all this stuff. Trump has done nothing, but he has united us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one good thing. That being said, so he apparently gave a bunch of stuff away, and we got a bunch of stuff, but, in fairness of time, he couldn't write it all down. So now that he's not written it all down and probably forgot about 95% of what he said in that meeting, maybe Kim Jong-un wrote it down, and then he'll tear it up and then throw it underneath his desk so the people who work in the White House can look underneath Kim Jong-un's desk and staple it back together and tape it back together.
Right.
The man is a moron. He colluded with a dictator. Twice now. One, he colluded with Putin to get the election won. Two, he colluded with Kim Jong-un to give him everything. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
And for reference, Mr. President, on the offshoot that you're listening to this show, they don't use cannons anymore. It's not the War of 1812, you putt. Have a great day, Hal. I love your show.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait for you to actually be there at the next event. But if you can't be for whatever reason, we'll just satellite you in. You'll just have to FaceTime in from whatever bar you thought it was. And we had a great turnout, by the way, and it was so terrific to see everybody showing up at that. I can't thank you, those, and especially those in our chat room, and you know who you are, who traveled a great way to come and see us. You're absolutely right about the collusion aspect with North Korea, and the fact that I would go so far as to say that the North Korean interaction that Trump has had over the last little bit has two purposes. One is he's following orders from Vladimir Putin. Putin has wanted exactly what Trump is giving to North Korea for a very long time. They and China share a border with North Korea. They are all tied together. There is the edge, the part of Russia that supposedly Sarah Palin said she could see from her house, curves around the outside of China and North Korea. They are partners throughout. Putin has been trying to build a coalition with North Korea to sort of surround the northern part of China for quite some time. China, unfortunately, it feels like is falling into a bit of a trap there, because believing in some way that Putin can be trusted, in the same way that Trump is falling for the idea that Kim can be trusted in this circumstance. The reality is that he clearly, as a human being, is impressed by these maniacs who kill their own people. This is Trump talking about Kim Jong-un in a statement that he said later was a joke. Let's see if this.
Are we close to Epstein, Mr. Kim, here at the White House?
Could happen. I mean,
they talked about that yesterday.
I think it's something that could happen. Yeah. Hey, he's the head of a country, and I mean, he is the strong head. Don't let anyone think anything different. Right. He speaks, and his people sit up at attention. I want my people to do the same. Well,
he thought that was cute. He thought that was funny. By the way, he also saluted one of Kim's generals in a moment of just sappy, misinformed goofiness more than anything. And obviously this, I guess, beta male reflex that he seems to have around guys with, to borrow an alt-right phrase, that he seems to have around guys with medals on their chest. But it's stunning to me that all the people who, were clamoring that the Iran deal was the worst deal that ever happened, that Obama is clearly in league with the Muslim Brotherhood, that Huma Abedin through Hillary Clinton was crafting the Iran deal so that Muslims could take over the country and introduce Sharia law, and just these bizarre conspiracy theories that gain weight all the way up to Fox News. Never mind the fact that now Trump has scuttled the Iran deal, which was, worked with 6 other countries to put into place, that had a system of verification that was, that was very focused and very defined. He scuttles that one, says it's the worst deal ever, and then on a handshake goes over to Singapore, sits down with Kim Jong-un, literally puts the American flag right next to the Korean flag, the North Korean flag, elevating this country in the eyes of the world, and certainly in the eyes of the North Korean people, because that's just propaganda photographs that are going to be pushed all over the place, that they are the same as us. On a handshake, signs the exact same deal that was signed in 2007, and then verbally gives away that we're not going to do our military exercises in the region, and will not be prepared if they push to take any territory. Period. Like the idea. Can you again? We've kind of overrun the oh my God, what if Obama moments. But imagine for a moment that to get the Iran deal in place, Barack Obama had ceased military exercises in the Mediterranean. I mean, wrap your head around that for a second. And imagine Hannity's head, vape exploding on television. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Thanks for the call, and thanks for the super chats, folks. Appreciate it. We're at halsparks.tv. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Always helps us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, it's the computer I'm using. I'll just think. Yeah, the golf. I was just kind of randomly picking, but yes, the golf would work as well. I was just thinking near like the Turkey, Kurdish regions and Iraq, Afghanistan, like unrelated stuff, because they don't just do those, sort of facing north. But yeah. And I think you're right, Julie. I think he's, I think he fears the reality that he is up against is this is bad. What's actually happening with Manafort, with Cohen especially, these are horrible for him. Helpless Trump says he wants people to stay. Yeah, that's the audio I just played. I don't know if that came through. So. Oh, thanks, Amos. That's right. Camden's now 7 years old, and this is tomorrow's Father's Day, so that's very exciting. He and I are gonna go. We're gonna go do Kiss mini golf on Father's Day, and I'm getting a new tool chest apparently, which I'm very excited about. Thank you, Tom. That's right, Brad. It's the fact that it's even here is exciting for me personally. Well, what do you know? What I just said on the air turns out to be completely correct. I'll bring it up. Just came out in the New York Times. Thank you, guys. Oh, thanks, Julie. Thank you, Eli said. Thank you, Eli said? Okay. Billy, thank you so much. Thank you, Lord Dracul.
We have a couple more callers.
Okay.
And I already let them know so they know to make the statement.
Okay, great.
Steve, and I didn't get the other name yet.
Okay. Yeah, Diana, that's a great analogy. Somebody's phone's ringing. Okay, I'll get to this one. Let's see.
10 seconds.
Okay.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn puss-faced little pimpstick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So first thing they said was that that Donald Trump Jr. Had this meeting in Trump Tower, and it was just there was no meeting, and then there was a meeting, and then the meeting wasn't with Russians, and then it was with Russians, and then it was with Russians to just talk about ended up being about adoption, and then it found out that it was actually a promise of dirt on Hillary Clinton, which is illegal. But when he showed up, he took the meeting because he didn't know that that's illegal, and that in business, if you get dirt on quote unquote your opponent, you just use it. Because that's just how you do business. And then when he found out there was no dirt, then he was irritated, and he left early because all she wanted to talk about was adoption, and who cares where kids get to go, and if they get raised in healthy, loving, supportive environments. Like, I mean, and then but his dad didn't know about it, and nobody else was in the meeting. And then we find out that Manafort was in the meeting, and that Jared Kushner was in the meeting, and that another Russian operative was in the meeting. And then we find out that that right after the meeting, Don Jr. makes phone calls to a blocked number that, let's be honest, everybody knows is his dad. That more than likely Manafort was talking to Trump in that meeting via text message, or actually had him on speaker so he could hear the whole thing without being there. Then on Monday, the next day, he threatens. He says, in 2 days, there's going to be all this stuff about Hillary Clinton that's coming out, because they thought they were going to be getting this from this meeting, and then they didn't have it, and blah blah blah. And then they create this statement saying that none of this was true and all this, and then the story comes out that that Trump had, added things to it, which is illegal. And then it comes out that, no, he didn't just add things to it. He dictated it in person. Like, literally, this was written by Trump verbally in the room. And then this is where we've gotten to.
Did you dictate the statement about Donald Trump?
Let's not talk about it. You know what that is? It's irrelevant. It's a statement to the New York Times, the phony, failing New York Times. Just wait a minute.
To clear it up.
That's not a statement to a high tribunal of judges. That's a statement to the phony New York Times. In fact, frankly, he shouldn't even speak to the New York Times, because they only write phony stories anyway. Although yesterday they wrote a nice story about what
So at that wonderful scrum yesterday that was going on, which was fairly hilarious, which, by the way, ended on Trump walking away saying that Obama is to blame for Russia invading Crimea. That Ukraine and Crimea are Obama's fault because Putin didn't respect, and by respect he means fear, Barack Obama, and therefore that's why they invaded. Never mind the fact that at the G6, at the G7, I'm calling it the G6 because Trump basically bailed out. That he had basically said that Ukrainians speak Russian, and Crimea would rather be a part of Russia anyways. So why are they excluded if these people would rather be in there anyways? Never mind them fighting for their own independence. Never mind the fact that they were forcibly under that. I mean, this is so dangerously close to Poland is naturally part of Germany anyways. This is such the complicity is insane. But let's take one of our callers because we've got some people waiting on the line. And we'll have the same process. So say what you need to say, and then I'll respond when you're done. Who do we have, Lady B?
We have Steve from the Go Call.
Oh, excellent.
Hi, Steve.
Hello. Yes, thank you for taking my call. And I think that this is demonstrative of what we already know about Donald Trump. I mean, he's not a student of history. He certainly doesn't understand diplomacy. The North Koreans are masters of brinkmanship. The process here has been one in which you secure your security of the state by developing a nuclear capacity, because that ensures that you're free from regime change. No one wants to go to war with a nation that has that capacity.
Right.
So then you negotiate. You agree that you're going to cease all research and development on this front, except for one problem. Everything that you know about this has already been developed and can be stored on a flash drive somewhere and reconstituted within a matter of months.
Right.
Now that assumes that, by the way, that you dismantled everything. As you rightfully pointed out, this was the critique of the Iran deal. That, how can you trust these people? How can you enter into an agreement that's predicated upon trust? Yet somehow it's going to be perfectly fine to trust the North Koreans.
Right.
So it's amazing to me that you've got it who bypasses the Defense Department, the State Department, bypasses all of the protocols involved in making this sort of deal and actually being informed about what the intricacies are. And instead, I don't need all of this. I'm going to know within the first 30 seconds by just looking the guy in the eye. As if, you were playing a $20 hand of poker in Las Vegas rather than international diplomacy. But this is the age in which we live, and unfortunately, there are people out there who simply refuse to look at the facts. We have an epidemic of cognitive dissonance in this country, in which Donald Trump simply says to his supporters, no, there's a giant lie, there's a giant conspiracy, there's a deep state. Forget what your eyes and ears tell you about my previous statements. Believe me now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the call. Let him know, Lady B. The idea somehow that Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions, and in the case of Stephen Miller, by the way, this them falling into a trap that, by the way, they are comfortable in. There are certain people who believe that that they have a certain role to play as sycophants to certain power brokers, and that gives them worth in the world. I mean, just look at the behavior of Michael Cohen over the last couple of decades. There's this story that came out about how in 2009 he wasn't really producing much for the Trumps, so they were thinking about giving him the heave-ho. They were going to broom him, and Trump even said when he came into the office one day or whatever, he's like, what's he doing here? Basically get him out of here. And apparently Cohen had a near breakdown and said, what can I do to get, it back into Mr. Trump's good graces? And this whole conversation about I'd take a bullet for him and all this like mafia cult-like talk towards someone who clearly does not warrant this kind of loyalty on any measure. There has to be, at some point, a mental illness classification for that kind of following. Because on the one hand, for Trump to believe, to be an egomaniac, or and again, I'll have this argument with anybody about the narcissistic personality disorder. I don't think the man is a narcissist. I think he has horrible self-esteem issues that he, solves through bravado, fakery, and lies. That occasionally he can believe his own BS, but that's wholly unrelated to the fact that he finds himself an ugly mess and makes up for it by how he treats other people. Whereas, Narcissus was overwhelmed with his own beauty and fell into the water. Trump is, so clearly, hates his own reflection that he would rather drain the river and let everybody die of thirst. So it's just a different methodology. But when I was saying that, there's a wing of the White House. There's this little Trump triumvirate of him, Jeff Sessions, and Stephen Miller, who not only think this is a functional play on, like I said, on two fronts. One, to get people who they believe who are coming this way to not come to the United States because they fear that their life here will be actually worse than the war zone that they are in. And second, to bully Democrats into paying for the wall. And by the way, signing an immigration bill that technically solves this issue but leaves other doors open for them to do the exact same kind of behavior to further this policy in the future. So it just gives them another group to take hostage. He just gave, Stephen Miller just gave an interview to the New York Times. And he said, no nation can have the policy that whole class of people are immune from immigration law or enforcement, Miller told the Times. It was a simple decision by the administration to have a zero-tolerance policy for illegal entry, period. The message is that no one is exempt from immigration law. This is in direct contrast to what Trump said on the White House lawn yesterday. This is the absolute opposite of that statement. Trump saying this is the Democrats' law and only they can choose it. Literally, Stephen Miller the next day is saying it was a simple decision by the administration to have a zero-tolerance policy for illegal entry, period. The message is that no one is exempt from immigration law. Mara Gay, who is a member of the the New York Times editorial board, introduced, basically called him the leader of the White House faction, intentionally inflicting harm. She said, let's be clear, though, immigration has been an issue, a difficult one, a thorny one for the administration, but some stuff we see going on is cruel, it is intentional. This is the Stephen Miller faction. That's what's happening. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Is audio still all right? Thank you so much, Evernum. That's really sweet. I appreciate that. There is a... hold on. Whoops. Scrolling. I can't tell if having my YouTube window open slows things down or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop out the chat and close the YouTube window and literally just chat with you guys. See if that works. We'll see if that helps with the throughput at all. Since I have, it's encoding video going up. Hey, there we go. I don't know if it'll help, but we shall see. So since I'm not, there you go. Oh, sixes. Thank you so much. I keep pixelating. Yeah, it happens. I think, like I said, I think it's the encoding ability of this particular computer. It's all right. But hopefully this will help a little bit, maybe. Who knows? Who can say? Who can say? Maybe raises the output because the computer isn't having to, hey, it looks a little better. Maybe. Let me know if the video gets a little better when I don't watch actual YouTube on the same computer I'm sending with, because that's usually the problem, is that I have to check the signal that's going, and I can only do that on the same computer I'm using. So Let's see. How do you? Let's see. They do not understand people will vote these administrations in a couple of months. I agree, Edward. Absolutely. Jeff Sessions knows the slave owner's version interpretation of the Bible. This is true. Right on. Good for you, EO. Thanks, Julie.
20 seconds, and we have a couple more callers.
Yes, I'm scrambling my signal there. You pixel when I move fast. I'll move a little slower. That'll be the key. I'll only... That should work.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
We have another caller on the line. Who do we have, Lady B?
We have Ivan.
Oh, excellent.
Hi, Ivan.
Hey, Lady B. What's up, pal?
Hiya.
Hey, speaking of big lies, the unemployment numbers came out this week. Again, dispels one of the biggest teabagger lies. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, disaster. Obamacare is going to destroy healthcare jobs.
Right.
To the contrary, I think the friggin' healthcare jobs have increased every month since the ACA went into effect. And furthermore, I tell you what will cost jobs, especially black jobs, is the teabagger fools in Congress repeal of Obamacare. Wake up, teabaggers. You've been bamboozled again.
Oh, good Lord. Yep. I appreciate the call. You're absolutely right.
Thank you, Ivan.
Yeah, thank you. The reality is that we are still obviously riding the benefits of the Obama economy, and much like Obama had to deal with in the first year and a half, 2 years of his his first term, the damage done by the Bush economy, and that effectively what you're seeing right now, as far as a healthy economy, would have occurred within the first 2 years of the Obama administration had the Republican policies that, by the way, they are doubling down on, not been instituted, in the first place. Had they not wrecked the economy, the Bush administration's both spending on Iraq and their unfunded tax breaks, and basically wasting the entire surplus that the Clinton administration had been able to create. We've seen this time and time again, that these weird, again, I hate to overuse the phrase, but cult-like beliefs about economics and prosperity and the like that the Republicans have, that always seem to drag the economy down into a blender to pay off their buddies, is always righted again by 8 years of a Democrat. That a Democratic president has to come in, sweep up after this nonsense, and the American voter vacillates during this time like that. I'm tired of cleaning my room. I want to go back to playing. And that, has this kind of childish response to governance being conducted by adults. And this idea, again, that the Trump administration was somehow, quote, anti-elitist, when this nouveau riche, second-generation rich kid, who hosted a reality program that's ratings were middle to everything else, had no back end on it. There was no secondary win on that. Again, the difference between a reality show and a scripted show is that you can watch a scripted show again and it's still good. This idea that somehow The Apprentice in some ways was anything other than just kind of fodder and an embarrassment to everybody who went on there, especially in light of the alleged behind the scenes tapes that are eventually going to come out. I'm guessing around the 2020 election. That's my, if Trump manages, basically someone is holding these things close to their chest in case he, for when he runs again, thinking that he never would have, was going to win, and then it was too late, and now that he's in, It will just be chaos. Somebody is making these kind of calculated decisions. But my guess is that that stuff is going to start coming out, late next year. If we're not at a point where Trump is already, confronted by his own legal woes, stepping down. And the story that I think went under the radar for a couple of reasons. One is Manafort going to jail is a huge deal. The fact that the president's campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, prisoner 45343, is in jail as of last night, is having his first steel tray breakfast this morning in the VIP wing in Warsaw, Virginia, of a federal penitentiary, because he was witness tampering in an attempt. And by the way, this, person's D1 and D2 that they were saying that that somehow he was contacting these people. He was using a couple of things. He was using WhatsApp and another encrypted app. And then he was doing this nesting idea where he writes a draft email, they write draft emails, and they just kind of communicate behind the scenes that way. Which, by the way, if you respond in the same email account is dumb, because people can see that there's a draft that's got more information in it written at another place and another time from another computer. You have to be a special kind of stupid to not do this well. It's what you do is the other person has to have an account that they write their draft email. And Edward in our chat room was right. The draft email is a dead drop. It is the modern equivalent of a dead drop. That you have to set up your own account and do that, and your response email has to be in the one that they read. You can't create an email chain within in the draft section of it. I mean, the idiocy is stunning. The arrogance. So ultimately, they both have. Manafort is going to stay in jail. He's not coming out. They may pardon him for some stuff, but he's on trial in 2 districts, only one of which Trump can pardon anything from. He's in jail for good. My personal feeling is the fact that Manafort is holding out, and the people that he's been rubbing elbows with over the years, he has bigger fish to fry and more things to worry about than Donald Trump. I think the reason he's not flipping is because the Russians, the Ukrainians that he has worked with that are pro-Putin, are not above killing people's family members. They do it all the time. They kill their rivals. There is no reason to suspect that Manafort hasn't decided that for the safety of his family and all this, he dug this hole. He's going to go to jail so that they don't end up dead. It is very easy to believe, considering the people that this guy did business with over the years. Paper ledgered, criminal enterprise, straight up foreign money laundering on a massive scale in the realm of arms and drugs and all of that. This is a guy who's doing business with people that will kill your family and you. It only goes to show that when Manafort was let out of a courtroom last night and ultimately to his jail cell, they brought his tie, his belt, and his wallet back to his wife. The wallet is just something so that she can keep in case she needs any of the identification stuff for his lawyers and da-da-da-da. The belt and the tie is because the guy was wearing loafers, so there's no shoestrings. This is an anti-suicide thing because they know at his age and with the seriousness of these things, he's not coming out. And at this point, it is completely reasonable that he doesn't survive. In any other circumstance, if this wasn't involving the president of the United States and didn't have eyeballs on it, he'd have been dead a long time ago. Because of the people that he interacts with and because of their fearless arrogance and their willingness to kill people. The Ukrainians, the Putin himself, I mean, these are all very serious, dangerous, murderous people. And so I believe he won't flip. I think they don't need him to flip also. They can simply indict him and during that indictment and the preceding investigation, since he has no even the illusion of attorney-client privilege that Cohen had. I think it is completely reasonable to believe that they will have access to every single piece of electronic information he's exchanged over the last few years. There's no point where he has to flip to tell anything. The only thing Manafort would have is kind of interpersonal interactions with Trump or with Donald Trump Jr. or with Jared Kushner that somehow incriminates them even further. There's no reason to believe, though, that these people have not said all this stuff in an email. As stupid as Don Jr.'s exchanges have been, if it's later in the in the summer, I love it, especially that all that stuff where Don Jr. is comfortable colluding and exchanging information with a foreign government during a political campaign. The arrogance and the idiocy of all of them, plus all the fact that their businesses are so slapdash and so poorly formulated that it will come as no surprise when they get trapped by their own words later on. You don't need Manafort to roll for all this stuff, but if he is found guilty and he is sentenced to a long, he's gonna at some point, we're talking at least multiple life sentences for what he's done. There's every reason to believe that the material they will be able to seize due to the fact that he was found guilty of these things after the fact, because they will indict people he's done business with based on his being found guilty. That all of those, there is every reason to believe that the material they will find in that circumstance will make his needing to flip unimportant. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We already have more than 6 years of communication on Manafort. Exactly, Edward. And I think it does go back even further. I think there's foreign stuff. And I think there's like paperwork in other countries that they will be able to get access to at some point if it's not destroyed already. Does an orange jumpsuit? Yeah. Remember the former Russian agent was killed in England? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Evernum, I think you're right. I mean, I think there's an aspect of the people that this guy has been involved with are so damn sketchy that any of them could be, physically dangerous if you roll on any of them, Yeah, that's Billy. That's what I'm getting to next. Yeah, this is another one of those, like the Stormy Daniels thing, where you're like, oh, all of a sudden this becomes a story that becomes more important than the rest for whatever reason. That collusion isn't the thing that brings down Trump. It ultimately is about the Trump Foundation stuff. But there's no end to the amount of just shenanigans this guy's been involved in. So yeah. looting the Trump Foundation still seems like embezzlement, yet no one is using that word. Yeah, Carl, I think it's because you have to file, the people who run the foundation would have to file charges for embezzlement. You're not going to file charges against yourself. I think that's why. Thank you, Milkman Norm.
20 seconds.
Thank you. That's awesome. Appreciate it. Yeah, Carl, I just don't. I think one of the ways they've gotten away with stuff is just committing crimes that, against fake companies they've set up themselves.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
So right about the time the Russian collusion story is starting to gain steam, and Flynn and George Papadopoulos and Carter Page and all these people are, being found to have had obvious and flagrant connections to Russians who are tied directly to Vladimir Putin, who have been engaged in manipulation of other countries' electoral systems. But right at about that time, that's arcing up, and you're like, okay, this is going to be the thing that really goes that Trump, that brings Trump down. And then the Stormy Daniels story pops out and has way more legs than, no pun intended, than the Russian story, or than people thought it would, anyways. To the point where his payment violates campaign finance laws, that it ultimately leads to Cohen, involved in this amazing amount of legal, as a legal con job, effectively using this other attorney, working in concert with this guy, so that anybody that tries to sue Donald Trump, suddenly this lawyer shows up at the door going, hey, I negotiated, I got money out of the Trump people. If you want a payday, I'm your guy. And everybody else is just going to run up against the wall and they're going to shut you down. But I've won money in the past, and I can win money for you. And then it turns out this guy is operating with Michael Cohen in concert, that they are using this as a way to manipulate people who are accusing Donald Trump of sexual impropriety, in the case of, where it was a regular affair, simply just buying the story and killing it. And you think, wow, this led to Michael Cohen's office getting raided because of all the other illegality that he's been involved in, that the attorneys in those cases were able to find, because his basically all his filings are just as stupid and slapdash as theirs are. That raid leads to stunning amounts, volumes of material that are going to be headed to Robert Mueller's office 10 days from now, because on the same day that Manafort was sentenced to, had his bail revoked, he was not sentenced. Trump said he was sentenced. He was not sentenced. On that same day, the judge in the Cohen case gave them 10 days to continue to look into which materials would constitute attorney-client privilege. He's given them 10 more days to actually do this. Now, in the meantime, so that the very fact that the Stormy Daniels story is literally singularly responsible for Cohen's office being raided, and the materials that Cohen has in his possession about the business dealings of Donald J. Trump, is an extraordinary story. And the fact that it outpaced the Russia investigation quite quickly is stunning. Now, on top of that, there's a lawsuit was filed in New York about the Trump Foundation that argues that basically the Trump kids and Trump himself were using the foundation as a piggy bank, both to pay bills for their properties and to pay legal settlements that had been filed against them, which is
illegal. So this is Ricky Kleiman on CBS this morning. This is a serious lawsuit, and this lawsuit has merits on a number of levels, including referrals to the IRS and the Federal Election Commission. What happened is they're saying that before the Trump administration, when Donald Trump had this charity, so you look back, not when he's president, but back when he's in the campaign, when he had this charity since 1987, that it followed no law. That there are laws written that say how a charity must be run. There was no oversight. Off-camera question. Was it used for a personal benefit? Kleiman, personal benefit, paying off legal obligations, which you cannot do, and ultimately also used for campaign in Iowa to have payouts about veterans organizations just before the Iowa caucus. The New York Attorney General filed this lawsuit against the Donald J. Trump Foundation and its board of directors for violating state and federal law. This is a civil suit, under New York law, but there are referrals within it to the IRS and to the Federal Election Committee that point to major campaign finance and violations of tax law. That would point to the fact that in the process of this civil suit, either in leading up to it, or I guess they've claimed they've gotten some sort of access to the foundation's paperwork, what it filed versus who received checks from it, because essentially it's super easy without much, in standard investigatory work, is that when a charity files its paperwork about where its money went, you simply call those organizations and you say, hey, did you get a check for this amount from this charity? They took it. They said they took in this amount. You were one of the recipients. They don't really have a number listed here. What's the check? For our math to work out, it would have to be about $200,000. And they go, that's funny because we got one for $10,000 here, and that's that. And then they go, oh, well, then let's call everybody else. And over the process of calling everybody else, they find that the Trump organization is using the Trump Foundation to literally pay legal fines to pay their bills. And this is the part that boggles my mind. This is the part that I keep sticking on, is that if you are a billionaire, why do you have to do this? Why do you need to pay $150,000 or a $100,000 or a $200,000 legal settlement when you are a billionaire by pilfering your charity? I don't get it. If you want to pay, in a charity, pay for a painting of yourself that you want to hang in your lobby at one of your golf courses. You've got lawyers. You're paying these lawyers. All these lawyers will tell you, yeah, you can't just do that. It's illegal. And you go, okay, well, then I'll write a check. And on the one hand, Billionaire Chat is saying it's because Trump is cheap. And, that may be the case. But there are a lot less expensive ways of dealing with that kind of money when you're a billionaire that don't cost you. Buying a $10,000 painting of yourself that ultimately will cost you $100,000 in legal problems later, when you can just write a check for it. And Julie and our and EO and some of the other people in our chat room are correct. I think it's because he's broke. I think it's because he's been broke for a long time. No billionaire hosts a reality show on NBC unless they operate on nothing they build, 100% on brand, and it's effectively just a commercial. But if you're busy making deals on the scale that Trump, the Trump company is supposedly making all the time, as far as building buildings, like he says,
I build buildings. I work with contractors all the time.
Basically, the Trump as a building magnate collapsed decades ago. And what he has effectively been engaged in is money laundering and branding across the world based on just leveraging his appearances on NBC. That's effectively it. Let's see. Integral Destiny in our chat room saying Trump used his foundation as a tax dodge. Some people develop a mental fixation about paying taxes of any amount. Sort of. I mean, the money is coming in. That's the thing. Like I think he's using that money because he doesn't have other money, because he is broke, because he's a debt snake, and he's been a debt snake forever, and he's leveraged. He's using his credit cards to pay his other credit cards, and he's been doing it for decades. And there's a certain level of protected class, these broke billionaires in our country and broke millionaires who are able to skate on all this and get away with it, because other banks and whoever else have created. They've got so much debt around this person, and if this person fails, if their business fails, the bank fails. And so business, what you find is up to a certain point, and we're talking in multi-million-dollar deals. Banks are throwing good money after bad, again and again, to the point where they eventually cut him off. And the only place that Donald Trump could get money was places like Deutsche Bank, and then that went away. And then ultimately, this is where the Russians step in. And so you've got a guy who's in debt to Russian oligarchs who've been paying his bills for the last 10 years. In exchange for what? Well, we're seeing that play out in our own political world right now. And I think it goes back as far as the birther conspiracies. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. I think they paid for that birther conspiracy. And I think they got their money's worth.
Jump back. What's that sound? Here she goes.
Limbaugh's not broke. His bills are paid by the Heritage Foundation. None of those guys are broke. Once you got 5 million, man, you never have to fall below that line again. That's what I'm talking about. Unless you throw your money away, you're fine. And believe me, the Limbaughs of the world have plenty of offshore havens for their money to protect them for a while in case everything goes to hell. You don't get to the point of like Hannity money unless you've put away $20 million somewhere. You don't Bill O'Reilly. You don't get to be Bill O'Reilly's position where you're willing to pay someone, what was it, $26 million or whatever the amount was, unless you put that level of money away someplace. I agree, Brad. I think it should be the law that if you run for office, you have to show your taxes, maybe the last 5 years at the very least. Yeah. Let's see.
Hal, we're about a minute, and I have Billy from the chat room on.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Billy. I forgot you were holding. There you are. We got so carried away. Yeah. And I won't be able to hear you, Billy, but she'll instruct you. Just go ahead.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending.
Let's understand too that the IG report is the new Nunez memo. That this is the Republicans were waiting for something, some sort of report, some sort of investigation to let them off the hook. The only one that they've been able to to guarantee gave them some sort of cover was one that they constructed themselves. And even the Nunez memo, when it came out, fell flat. Nobody bought it. Everybody knew that it was based on shenanigans and nonsense and sycophantic support of the president. So nobody went after it. The IG report itself comes out that, yeah, Strzok and his girlfriend during the election talked crap about Trump, but they also talked crap about Hillary, about Bernie. They weren't a fan of any of them. Ultimately, when the big thing that they have latched onto, and this keeps coming back, the Republicans are like, we'll stop him, right? This is the thing, like, he can't possibly be president, right? We'll stop him, whatever. And everybody going, this is the result of political bias. This is Democrats in the FBI using their political bias and manipulating the investigation to go after Trump for nothing. Understand that the EIG report showed that they didn't end up materially affecting the Trump investigation about Russia themselves. First of all, Strzok wasn't in charge of it, didn't have any of that kind of control in general. Both of them actually called for grand juries against Hillary Clinton, didn't get it. So they sought probably further examination of the Hillary Clinton email than they actually got. It wasn't found to be warranted. But ultimately, this idea that they spoke ill of Trump and therefore they must be biased. It is amazing how many people who would normally support Donald Trump or support his policies, suddenly when they get a look at the evidence against him, hear the recordings, see the documents, suddenly they have this magical bias against Donald Trump. Isn't it striking that Republicans who are in the government, who work in the State Department, the Department of Justice, and the FBI, the CIA, the DNI, all get a look at Donald Trump's conversations with people connected to Vladimir Putin. They get a look at and listen to all these recordings, and suddenly they, quote unquote, have a bias against him. That is like saying that somehow the IRS had a bias against Al Capone because they knew he was a booze runner, and that's why they went after his taxes. We got a caller on the line, and it's one of the people in our chat room. Go to halsparks.tv, and you can join in the chat room with us, like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. That would really help us out. And it's Billy from our chat room. Can we get him, Lady B?
Hi, Billy.
Yay, hey, and not to mention the biggest hypocrite of the week being Comey, who used his own private cell phone for business.
Right.
What I did want to mention was these guys are just incompetent, and they use a whole lot of other things that are going on to mask that. I'm pointing to Puerto Rico, where they had actually 4,000 deaths down there. And then they had a report come out this week that showed that they were supposed to have over 250 generators down there, and they only had like 25. They had to go through 3 companies just to provide tarps. They kept paying the companies and not getting tarps provided for Puerto Rico. This is what happens when you appoint incompetent people like Ben Carson, Betsy DeVos, Rick Perry, Scott Pruitt, and even Kirstjen Nielsen, who doesn't know that Russia is actually invading our electronics. The GOP is incompetent when it comes to working a government system, and they all need to go. Have a good one, Hal.
Yeah, thank you, Billy. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. An excellent point about Puerto Rico. I mean, I personally don't feel like I've talked enough about what's going on in Puerto Rico over the last little bit, because there's so much other news that's always taken precedent, and that ultimately, that this single focus on dealing with Trump and kind of getting to the point where he's actually the Republican Party recognizes that the toxicity of this administration and the violence that they are perpetrating. Ultimately, thank you, Billy. that until they reach that point, we will keep having problems like Puerto Rico, like sending these toddlers to tent cities on military bases. This is it. This is the crucial aspect of this, and ultimately what it must lead to is vote. You must vote, and you must vote for the Dem that will get in office, that will support the coalition of Democrats to fight back against this president. This is a material necessity at this point. This idea that somehow we can burn the place down and build a nice house out of the ashes is madness. And you guys know me, I won't be a part of it. This is crazy. So, but meanwhile, this is Trump on the separation of families. This is the story they're telling.
Announced a zero-tolerance policy at the border on May 7th.
Because he's following the law. No, he's following laws. He's following a law that was
a direct order to...
Can I answer your question, please?
Yes.
Okay, you're just asking me the same question over and over. He's following laws, very simply, that were given to us and forced upon us by the Democrats.
But there's no law that you families have to be separated at the border.
The Democrats gave us the laws. Now, I want the laws to be beautiful, humane, but strong. I don't want bad people coming in.
So that
problem in one meeting. Tell the Democrats, your friends, to call me.
Can you?
That's that weird thing he did with April Ryan, like, do you know the Black Caucus? And this idea that somehow that this reporter who's questioning what he has to do, because Peter Ducey is standing next to him, which is Steve Ducey's son, interviewing him. So every other reporter there must be a friend of the Democrats. If you'll notice, that's not an accident. When Trump says, tell your friends, the Democrats, to call me, blah, 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 because his belief system is that if you care about this, you must be a Democrat and you must be in league with them. This is part of this constant conspiracy theory idea that he's pushing. This rigged system phrasing. This, and his supporters respond to it. They positively. So understand that this won't change until this guy is either held, basically frozen in place by a blue wall. If you're not talking about build that wall, build the blue wall. There you go. And until he's held in place by this, until there are people who actually limit this kind of behavior from him and can push back with legislation or can tie up the purse strings on things that he wants in exchange for getting him to the table on other stuff. But the reality is that until that happens, he's going to keep making up these laws out of whole cloth, lying to the public about it, and implementing these things willy-nilly where he sees fit. He's going to the trade and tariff. We haven't even had time to talk about the tariffs. In chat room, I just agree. I agree. That might be that, build the blue wall might be the, and just yell big blue wall, big blue wall. But as he goes, he is simply untethered from both reality and any kind of ethic. And the fact that the Stephen Millers of the world are dictating his policies, meaning that the worst people in the world on issues like this are finally in charge of it. It's amazing that Stephen Miller has been able to operate under the radar so much in this White House, considering the undue influence that he has and the cruelty of the stuff that it seems focused on. But he, more than anyone, exemplifies the Trump cabal's identity. Trump is literally the constituency of one is Stephen Miller. We will see as this goes on, but Stephen Miller is dictating policies in this White House in a way that I don't think people recognize. I doubt Manafort will be flipping, by the way. I know there's been a lot of stories about that. Again, I stand by the fact that I think he's under threat. and I don't think he will do it. But we will see. We're 10 days away from Cohen's info hitting the airways to some degree, or maybe 15, depending on the days after it comes out, what will be released to the public. So expect this to grow and expect another summit. Trump also wants to do a Putin summit. We'll talk about that next week. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much to our callers, to our super chat, to our chat room. You guys are awesome. Love you. See you next time. Thank you, Lady B. Signing off. Thank you. Thank you, Lady B. We'll figure these phones out eventually. I think my tie line might be arriving today, so hopefully by next week I'll be able to put that one in place. You're awesome. Talk to you later. Bye. Let's see if, I don't know if connecting through this, if suddenly things get better or whatever, but I'm going to sign off today since the video isn't that great, and you guys are so awesome. Thanks for sticking around through this. Brad, sadly, I think you're right. I think something untoward will happen to Paul Manafort before he flips. I think he's kind of resigned himself to kind of, legally fight this way out. Maybe he's willing to, the guy's got millions upon millions of dollars socked away, hidden overseas. So I bet you he's thinking it's a 5-year investment, and he'll continue to do business overseas. So I think it's a question you can ask anybody. Would you do 2 years in prison for $50 million? And a lot of people would say, yeah. Especially if you're getting up in years, 2 years passes a lot faster than when you're young. So I think there's a very strong chance that he would soldier out a couple or 3 years before he ever rolled on this. And I think a lot of people are watching him, that if he doesn't show any signs of rolling, and just does his time like a good criminal, that ultimately he'll be rewarded on the other side. Aw, thanks, Brad. I'd do prison for you guys too. Once my son was grown up. And that's the thing. It's like once your kids are adults, maybe. So actually, how 2 years pass the same no matter what age you are. Yeah, but experientially, once you're older, time passes a lot slower. Remember what it was like waiting for Christmas when you were 7, and now you're like, Jesus, is it Christmas already? I just finished cleaning up the wrapping paper from the last one, right? Trump tweet 5/31/18. What did he say? Sorry, I'll look at it. Anyways, thank you. I'm going to have a good Father's Day. I'm very excited about it. You guys are wonderful. Thanks, Julie. Hopefully that will never be the case. I appreciate it. And if so, we should all go together and we'll be like in Goodfellas, where we're all, cooking Italian food and learning how to slice garlic super thin. So send Manafort to real jail, see what happens. It's a pretty real jail he's in, but I agree. I mean, I think there's a difference once he settles that. But I think the window will stop. The window will close rather. So, anyways, be well, you guys. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much. And next time video will be a lot better. I promise. You guys are awesome, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.